Most young men are single. Most young women are not. Nearly half of all young adults are single. Now, look at these numbers. 34% of women, twice as many, a whopping 63% of men. What explains that? Turns out since 2019, the share of single men who say they're looking for dates or a relationship has declined from 61% to 50%.
So what do you think is going to be like the outcome that's going to come from this?
Bad things.
In the worst case scenario, the young American man's social disconnect can have tragic consequences. Young men commit suicide at 4 times the rate of young women. Younger women are largely responsible for rising rates of mass shootings, a trend that some researchers link to their growing social isolation.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a bad sign when you have too many men that aren't working, have nothing to live for, and feel like they have no direction in life.
No purpose.
Right? No purpose. And I don't think it helps that society isn't making it any better, because there's a lot of negative campaigns against men. I feel like a lot of men are just lost on even how to operate in society.
The economic trends for men have turned downwards along 4 dimensions. One is wages. Most men today earn less than most men did in 1979. In employment, with a drop in labor force participation of 8 percentage points, which means 9 million men now of prime age are not working. We've seen a drop in occupational stature, and so there are now more men working in employment areas which are seen as lower status than they were in the past. And we've also seen a drop in the acquisition of skills, the kinds of skills and education that boys and men need.
Because we see a lot of these stories online where a guy will get maybe like a false charge, or someone is saying something negative about them, or
they're losing their job.
Or they're not sure how to operate around a woman.
Over a very short period of time, it's become less acceptable to strike up a conversation in real life without seeming inappropriate or creepy. According to one poll, 17% of young Americans now believe that a man inviting a woman out for a drink constitutes sexual harassment.
For example, we just did a video where this girl rejected a guy because he wouldn't pay for cheese. Imagine you're a guy and you want to date a girl, and the back of your mind is like, you know what? I'm doing bad right now. I'm not making any money. I don't know what I want to do. And if I go on a date with this girl, she might just reject me over cheese.
The waitress comes over. He said, I'm going to take the burger. Do you want some cheese on your burger? He asked, is this going to be extra? And she says, yes, it's $3 extra. And he said, okay, then never mind. I was like, I'm going to the restroom for a second. And I went to the waitress. I just paid the bill and walked out of the restaurant. So I texted him, the check is taken care of. You should have gotten the cheese. And I blocked him.
I don't think it helps that there's also this thing where people are talking about toxic masculinity, and a lot of things that toxic masculinity highlights are things that are just things that men do. For example, like being competitive, that's a thing that men do. I don't think there's toxic masculinity. I think there's just toxic people. And I think as a young man, it's hard to navigate what's toxic and what's not toxic, because they're calling things that are generally being a man toxic.
I'm not saying men are victims. I understand that being a man comes with a mountain of privilege. But all men are taught negative stereotypes about themselves from a young age. And that's where the toxic part is born.
When you begin to interview them at 12 or 13, they tell you about a lot of love that they have for their friendships. They talk about wanting that kind of intimacy with other boys. As boys got older, they began to tell a very different story. They'll say things like, no homo, in response to a question about intimate friendships. That reveals the culture, because the fact they're equating friendship with gayness is a part of American culture of masculinity.
Men are discouraged from expressing their feelings, and too often that comes out as aggression instead. A man can't even cry without becoming a meme.
Think about it, if you're a young man and, like I said, you're born in this media age, you're going out with a girl and you're thinking, oh, is this toxic masculine? You know what I'm saying? Think about these people who graduate in 2020 or 2019 where all this crazy media stuff is going on. That's the stuff they're thinking in their brain.
What's the real problem?
You know what it is? I think a lot of men just feel like they just can't compete. This is what I think. I think that right now, because women are so ahead and they're making so much money, they have such a lead ahead of a lot of young men that a lot of young men are just like, okay, well, I'm just done. I just give up.
The overall picture is that on almost every measure, at almost every age, and in almost every advanced economy in the world, the girls are leaving the boys way behind and the women leaving the men.
I think a really big factor that I think we're also not really talking about is social media. So social media, when I was in high school, the biggest social media, it was Facebook. And then slowly it kind of went to Instagram. Overall, Facebook was very big. Like, that's where we would find parties at. A lot of times you talk to a girl, you're gonna talk to her on Facebook or whatever, or you're gonna get her number, or, you know. Ultimately, social media, it never played a huge part in my life, right? It wasn't integrated. Now it's like everybody expects you to have social media.
And then, Scott, you toss in the influence of social media and how relationships today, they don't come from, in our era, happenstance and mingling, right? They come from swiping, and that further accelerates this issue. Am I right?
Oh, it's been the chaser to it.
The thing about social media is that people always portray the best part of their lives. They have the best photos, they have the greatest lightings, their life is always great. You know, it's all A1 on social media. A lot of young men are seeing the false perception of people's lives. I also think online is just not catered to men. What are big factors in online dating and social media in general? Picture taking. It's wearing good clothing, taking good lighting, you know, finding good places. Most men I know are not photographers. The location and the lighting is like, when I go out, right? So when I go out, or I go to like a concert, or I go on vacation, my first thought is not to take a picture. I'm enjoying the moment, right? But let's say you're with your girl, or you're with, you know, what do? Oh, let's take a picture. Oh, let's go by here. I like this angle, I like this. That's perfectly suited for what? Social media, dating apps.
An average attractive male on Tinder gets swiped less than 1% of the time. And there's 3 men on Tinder for every 1 woman. So you've distilled it, you've taken out one of the key components of mating dynamics, and that is vibe, humor, body language, pheromones, the ability to be, quite frankly, a little bit persistent in the pursuit of a romantic relationship. We have no third places anymore, no places to meet. People aren't going to bars, they aren't sports league, they aren't going to church, they aren't even going to work. So it gets distilled down to very 1 or 2 dimensional attributes. And the reality is women are much choosier than men, and they can apply those screens, and they allocate all of their attention to a small number of men that results in just essentially at the end of the day, a lack of opportunities.
But guys, on the other hand, think about, you could be a perfectly lit guy, right? You could be a guy, you could travel the world, you could live an actual great life. But I don't think like most men, I think most men are getting used to the fact that they have to start taking pictures and putting that on scenery for social media. But I don't think that was like a first initial thought for them.
I'm going to say to men, I'm going to say to young men, I'm a young man still, but I'm going to say to like Gen Zs and whatever is after Gen Z, I don't know what that is. Put in work. I'm not laying all the blame of feet of men. I'm not, because hypergamy is real. Women want what they want.
It's not going anywhere either.
Women now, as they should, have a lot more ability to have upward mobility and to do bigger things and to have certain roles. And with that comes what? If you already have it in you to want a man who has more status, more money, etc., and you're already up here, well, guess what? These guys down here, they're not bad guys, but they're going to fall behind. I'm not blaming the women. I'm not blaming the men. I'm saying it's nature playing this course. I think women are not more choosy. Is now that choosiness was contained before because they couldn't do certain things. Now the guardrails have been taken off. It's out there.
In the last 40 years, more women have graduated from college than men, and they're not interested in mating with non-college grads. They now own more homes, single women, than single men. So what you have is women say they won't date anyone shorter than them, 50% of them. Effectively, what you have metaphorically over the last 40 years is women have been getting taller and taller, and men have been getting shorter and shorter. How many of us have said, I know a ton of great single women, they can't find a date? That's not true. They can't find a man they find economically or emotionally viable. If we don't make a massive investment in young people and make more economically and emotionally viable men, we're going to see a lack of household formation, we're going to see a decline in the middle class, and we're going to see, quite frankly, just a lot of young men who are terrible citizens.
I mean, it's free reign now, because you got to think. If you're a girl, you have a choice between a broke 22-year-old or a 31-year-old who's making $100K.
Right. So if you're a 24-year-old girl, like you said, if you're a 24, 25, 26-year-old girl, by the way, haven't women always normally dated older than them? That's part of what hypergamy is, too. They've dated older. So is this really news? It's news in the sense that there's an overall boy crisis. I will say that's true.
That is definitely true.
That's so true.
That is definitely true.
So many people were afraid that merely drawing attention to the problems of boys and men was implying somehow less effort being paid to girls and women, that it's framed as a zero sum, and it's sort of a whose side are you on question, and you have to be on one side or the other rather than just being on the side of human flourishing. One of the real challenges here is that if there are men missing from certain crucial areas of our society and our economy, that makes it harder for other men and boys to flourish in those areas. We have an education system that has a dearth of male teachers. We have a labour market where the jobs that are growing fastest are ones where we have the fewest men. And in families, there's the growth in what you might call the dad deficit or fatherlessness. As men are struggling in each of those areas, what you'll see is it'll be harder for other men to follow in their footsteps. It's harder for boys to flourish if their fathers aren't engaged. It's harder for men to enter occupations where there aren't men. It's harder for boys to do well at school where there are no male teachers to be seen. And so there's a very real danger that unless we act quite soon, that we will set in train something of a vicious cycle.
No, I mean, bro, you gotta think, back in the day, people were getting married at like
Yeah.
25, 24,
Yeah,
like.
that's true. That's true.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely think it's a big problem. But my thing is this, okay, so once those guys who finally have interactions with women and they're over 30, what's the chance of them actually settling down? I think that's going to be slim to none. I think there's gonna be guys who are like, oh, I finally got it. Let me just keep it or whatever. But I think a lot of guys are gonna be like mad. I think a lot of dudes are gonna be mad. I think a lot of dudes are gonna be mad that they went all the way to 30 without interaction from a lot of these women, and I don't think they're gonna settle down.
Most average guys are.
You say lover boys?
You see where I'm trying to go?
Yeah.
I mean,
most of them want one girl.
All right,
most of them want
you
one
get
girl.
what I'm trying to get
Most of
at.
them
Thank
want
you. That's
one
what I'm
girl.
trying to get at.
Yeah.
He's gonna want a family. He's gonna want a wife.
That's true, but here's the thing though. I can't see any. Like I said, are there some guys like this? Yes, right. I can't see most men only having sex with one woman in their life trying to marry them. I don't see it. See it today. I'd see it back then. Absolutely. I can't see a guy in 2023 being with one woman, right? Like being a virgin all the way to 30 and then getting married to the first woman they sleep with. I don't see that.
We just said that most men are not having sex, and they're not.
Yeah.
Men in their 20s are more likely than women in their 20s to be romantically uninvolved, sexually dormant, friendless, and lonely. They stand at the vanguard of an epidemic of declining marriage, sexuality, and relationships that afflicts all of young America. Among the causes, among the factors, a reliance on social media and online porn. But also, more young women are hooking up with each other or dating and marrying slightly older men, and heterosexual women are getting more choosy.
But I don't think that's going to automatically change once you turn 30, 31, 35, and you have a little more money. You're not going to start knocking them down like that.
I'm just saying that by then they'll probably have some kind of experience. Hopefully. Like I said, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, right?
They might have a couple experiences, some, couple here or there, but
I don't know. My general thing is this. I believe that guys, like, you have to date around until you find exactly what you want. You know what I'm saying?
they said
Yeah.
most of them said they reported being single. But here's the deal. Just because they're reporting being single doesn't mean they're not, like, dating.
Yeah.
Because it depends on how you define it.
You know what? Yeah.
Because I go on dates all the time. I'm single.
Yeah.
But I'm dating.
Yeah. Yeah, just because they're reported being single doesn't necessarily mean that, they're all virgins, but
Or not dating.
or not dating, or not even enjoying dating.
Right.
All right, guys. So that is it. This has been bad decisions. I don't even know if this is even a decision that they're. Well, yeah. I mean, they're choosing to be single, so I mean, that is a decision.